Good. Good. Yeah. As you know, Critical Connections is our effort to increase and enhance critical writing in ceramics. And we have a great core group here. Carol is new to our group, but I thank Janet for bringing her on. That was great and good to see some of you back. But one of the things I think, and I'm hoping that Kurt will join us because he was the one who threw in the AI and the handmade and the ramifications to the handmade. But I think in Adam's article, we're all talking about the changes, the daily changes, and in one of the quotes from the article that he wrote is, AI shifts day by day. The same prompt repeated at different times will create different results. And I suspect our evolving tolerance for it will as well. I just see that there's either a dissertation or at least a thesis in that statement. But I look forward to your thoughts on the articles and open it up for your discussion. Appreciate you all being here. Nancy's on the road, so I'm glad to see her here.
Well, I just like to say that I actually tried AI in several writing projects just to see. I went to Claude. That's a free sourced one, CLAUDE. I put in the writing for my text panels, and gave it prompts about, things that I wanted to make sure to say. But I told it instead of saying it in 350 words, I want it 250. And by God, it did it. I actually was amazed. It doesn't change your content. It just puts it in a different sentence structure. I don't know if anybody uses Grammarly, but I find it helpful because I can then compare the two and choose the better solution. I mean, maybe my first solution wasn't the best. I mean, as writers, we know we don't turn in first drafts. I mean, we rewrite and
Yeah.
Limitations for me on text panels are very difficult because I consider myself the long form person. I like to write books. I don't do short journalistic entries. So word count is always a struggle for me. So I found this writing as this ability to have something come back and give me critical suggestions was very helpful. And I know why teachers are all up in arms over it, because I mean, I teach too, but I think you can definitely tell a person's style from a generic chat GBT or whatever. And if it's just facts you want to communicate, then that's fine. But if you have a stylistic direction, I don't think artificial intelligence is going to be able to change that.
So you found what way I understand this, you wrote a 350 word essay and you put it into AI, asking it to reduce it to 250.
I did. And I said and I made bullet points and said, these are the points that need to be included so that it wouldn't indiscriminately, just take out important information. But it was able to discern what was important information. So I was quite pleased with it, actually.
And it didn't change your voice in it. It didn't change your writing style or.
No, because I actually put it in a narrative form. Now, if you gave it an outline, because I tried this too. I'm sorry if this is not interesting to anybody else. I'll just, stop speaking.
No, I think it's great.
But okay, but I did try an outline form. So in an outline form, it does do really a dry, rehashing of what you want to say. But if you give it your narrative in your voice, it really doesn't change it. It just if it wasn't well organized, it will do that for you. Mine hopefully was well organized. It didn't reorganize it, but it took out or made my points more succinct because I had to eliminate 100 words. And I wasn't afraid of it. I just thought, well, let's try it, because if it doesn't do anything, then you move on, right? But
Yeah.
but I find sometimes in the deepness of the midnight to 2 o'clock, 2 a.m. hour when I'm writing, that sometimes it's nice to have a buddy to help look at some of the, you get stuck. How am I going to get it down to 250 words? So
Yeah.
I took its suggestions and I rejigged them a little bit and submitted my text panels. So hopefully, and they went through the museum's editor and everything was fine. So I did look at it as having, an armchair editor, because that's what editors do. And I know my daughter is an editor too, and she's fearful for the industry that, their editorial will be eliminated. But I don't agree with that. I think editors are very necessary to make the important decisions, but they don't necessarily need to make all of them.
So did you credit Claude
No,
in
I
lieu
did
of
not.
crediting?
This is my testimonial to you. I did not tell the museum that I used it, but Beth Ann Gerstein, the director of the museum, she's the one who told me about it. She uses it to help her write letters. Because,
Okay.
letters in a director's day can be very daunting. They're
Yeah.
time consuming. So she would just write out all the information that she needed to tell a donor or, a lender
Yeah.
and letter back.
Okay, Diane, you had a comment or question?
Yeah, I in fact use AI. I subscribe to Chat GPT 4.0, and two things. It does learn voice. A New York Times editor and writer put in her articles, had it write another article, and she wrote how brilliant it was. It learns your style if you give it access, but that also means you're giving the public access. You become part of that whole compliment. The other thing is AI hallucinates. So now North Carolina lawyers have to sign that they have not used AI except for a very small research base, because it made up cases. Lawyers went to court and were presenting cases that never existed. United Airlines, I think, also had the problem where AI hallucinated and made up a free day to fly, and it had to be honored. And my last point is I used it when I was in a sense charged with writing I'm blanking on the word, which is why I used AI, for a nonprofit to write their what's the basic statements,
Mission statement.
a mission statement, and something else, to show that they're so robotic that it's the action plan, not the I'll put it in the chat box when it comes to me without help. Those templates that every organization has, because I just think sometimes people get caught up and do retreats for a weekend and spend a lot of money hiring consultants for those 2-3 page things, but it's really about what each nonprofit does and getting people on board for the action rather than just the generic words. I disclosed that I'd used AI to write it, and it led to a long discussion of how to make these statements personal to organizations rather than just robotic.
Okay, thank you, Diane. And Anna was trying to put her hand up but couldn't. So
I couldn't find the hand emoji for some. They keep changing things every time. I mean, I've been on Zoom like 6 times this weekend, is still looking for it. But I had the opposite problem of yours, Joe. So I teach professional development workshops and I teach people how to write artist statements. So I thought, oh, I need to, I've been using it for some writing to see how it was. I thought I need to be sure to let them know what's out there and what it can or cannot do. So I've been using the Chat GPT. We have access through my university. And I took just one paragraph of it, put it in, and the language was so flowery that anybody would have died of hysterics if I read it or I wrote it. So I went in and I put it back again, put the original back again, and I said to make it academic. And it was better, but it was using words that artists don't typically use in their artist statements. It really was. So
Mm.
you have to really tell it what type of writing you want. And my other guess is I have to use it more and more and more till it gets to know me. But just offhand, I got like opposite of what Joe did. I got like, it was about use. I mean, I have to admit there were certain sentences and certain parts of it that I felt were strong, but overall it wasn't me. And that's why I think teachers are easy to, it's not that difficult for teachers to figure out,
Well, I
Okay.
wonder if there's a big difference between Chat GBT and Claude, because
I doubt it.
I
But
don't know. I didn't have that problem, but I will say that when I used GBT when it first came out, I was writing an essay and I was asking it to give me the sources of, where, like, bibliographic sources. And it came back, it was on a particular potter, David Cressy. It came back with like 9 sources. And I said, okay, I'm going to check these out. Invariably, all 9 sources were hallucinations. And that's when I told my daughter, who works in the film industry, don't use this for any research, because I checked every single one of them and they were bogus. It was just terrible. I thought, how does it make it up? I mean, isn't it easier to find the real sources? I mean, they're out there. Why is it making up, fake sources? So I've never used it for that, but I don't know. What I was trying to say is I've dispelled my fear of it. I don't want to be fearful of it anymore. I want to see what it can do to help writers. And if editing can be a good function, then I'm willing to go there.
That's great. Nancy has a comment and then Janet.
Yeah. So I had 2 points I wanted to just bring up. One is I'm wondering if anyone has used AI to refine their bibliography. That's kind of one of the most tedious things, especially when you have an extensive bibliography. And I was wondering if anyone's ever done that, because I'm thinking of doing that. And then I had the experience, I wrote for this magazine a really excellent and well-received article. And I happened to hop on their website and they had AI narrate it and didn't tell me about it. And so here's my writing with this very obviously, computerized voice. And I found that distasteful and kind of wrong. But anyway, I wonder if anyone had thoughts on that as well, because I've since been asked by another magazine to narrate one of my articles, which I preferred so much better. But I was really bothered by this one magazine that just, without even asking me or asking for my permission, put an AI voice on my article. Any thoughts about that would be interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
Janet, you had a, oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Linda.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've used ChatGPT when I got something that said, put this into 250 words, your statement. It was fine. It was fine. But I say for Light and Exchange, I don't know, between 2 and 4 people used that ChatGPT to fill out the application. It was really obvious and it was really bad. Yeah, I think my administrator was going to give a talk. We'll start giving lectures on why don't to use that. So yeah, well, I don't think they had as much imagination or thoughts about their work.
Yeah.
So
Janet, you had a comment? Janet DeBoos, do you have a comment?
No, I
Okay.
didn't. I've sent you a message.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Someone else had something here.
I do.
AI has taken voices off the internet, someone said. Let's see, Diane Charnoff posted that the paid version of ChatGPT is far superior to the regular one, and that might be the case with some of you who have had positive or negative responses. And AI has taken voices off the internet from voiceover artists and narrates a la Daniel Craig and others, and there's no legal protection from what I've heard. So you may want to sign something if you narrate in your own voice that it's not to go to an AI source to keep your voice as yours. I think what you're talking about, Nancy, is Studio Potter. Is that right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. And Randy O'Brien will be with us next month and talking about changes and new things at Studio Potter for those of you who are interested. So other comments and yeah, Anna.
Well,
Can I
the,
just clarify? Oops, Studio Potter, I'm sorry to jump in, but Studio
That's all right,
Potter
go
is
ahead,
the
finish.
magazine who wants me to read, not the magazine who
Oh,
used
okay.
it. I just
All
want to
right.
clarify that they are, wanting me to narrate my own work. Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as student writings, there's always been this Turnitin and other ways that faculty can find out if students have plagiarized or somebody else wrote this or whatever. But so it's not something new. This is probably faster and easier for the student, but there are ways that faculty have always had to do that sort of thing. And then I recall my son calling one day really upset and he was a writing major. His teacher accused him of plagiarism, and I just knew what the problem was. He was probably one of the best writers. He was. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying he could write, and the teacher had all these students that couldn't write, and so she assumed that he was doing it, and they worked it all out, and she changed the grade and everything when she realized. But that thing about trying to figure out whether your students copying or not copying or using Chat GPT, that's been like forever, so we're all acting like it's something really new that that people faculty have to deal with, but we've had to deal with plagiarism for a long time. But it is like my writing was really obvious it wasn't my writing when and I, like I said, I did 2 or 3 versions of the same thing just to compare. And so this is not something new. It's probably more prevalent is what I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Well, I think AI, the way that Adam Chow was talking about it, is more powerful and forceful when it's in the image base, because they scrape so many images, millions of images from the internet, and you can be given it different prompts. You can come up with so many new renditions, but we're also doing that, we're also using other people's images. So then it brings up that question of legality, copyright. So, and I know the New York Times sued Microsoft or Bing or something because they scraped like 10 million of their images from their newspaper. So I don't know, that is a different department from what we're probably all interested in. But for those of us who are visual artists, it's kind of a great source to go to maybe bring up things that we hadn't thought of. I mean, we've all been using artificial ways to make images before. I mean, collages, ad infinitum, but this is a digital collage. And we're not doing the actual work of locating the images to make the collage. Someone else is doing that for us.
Mm-hmm. Judy?
Hi, I tried AI on 2 occasions. One was when I first was looking at it and wanting to see what it could give me, I decided to do an AI search on Robert Arneson. And since I did my dissertation on him, I wanted to see what AI would come up with. And I have to say, and I did it also for Volcus, just to see, because if you choose AI for something that you really know about, then you can weigh your experience against what AI is presenting. And what I found was that there was just factual information. There wasn't any insight or characterization. And so if you're using it to do facts and to try to find locations and things like that, it seemed to work well for me, and I was almost satisfied with it, but certainly not in a critical way of evaluating or thinking about the art form. And then recently, I was doing an article on, it turned out to be 48 hours in Istanbul for my website. And although I had 3 very informed people living in Turkey and living in Istanbul, they gave me information and about ceramic sites to visit and etc. But it didn't have enough of the historical background because I guess they just weren't interested in it. So then I used AI to get historical background, let's say on the Blue Mosque or on Topkapi Palace. And then I integrated it into their article. And that worked when you're working with historical, when you want facts and figures. And I found that to be helpful because it would have taken a lot of research to look up all of that information on Wikipedia. And so I found that to be pretty helpful on that. But I've not used it, and I appreciate this chat about Chat GPT. I didn't know about that. I just use Claude. And it's interesting that, Joe, you seem to have liked Claude better than Chat GPT. And I wanted to ask this group, are those the only 2 that you know of, or are there others?
Anyone know? One of the articles that we looked at was the creative fusion of ceramics and artificial intelligence. Has anyone used this in a creative way, or with the handmade, with the imagery?
I went to the lecture at NCECA on AI and building AI, and then of course somebody said, well, what about the hand? And they said, it's over. It's your head to the piece, and you're always screwing up anyway because it's dripping or something. So, but that was their take.
Yeah.
But it's really quite different if you're doing visual. What Adam Chow does cleverly with AI is to use information that he never would have found ever. I mean, he asked AI to invent images that never existed, and he asked them to put them together. And so it's funny and I mean, it's really clever and hysterical because he had them put gay imagery on something that was probably never existed. And so he used it in an imaginative and creative way to foster his art idea. And I think visually that's incredibly interesting.
Diane?
And some embed mistakes through AI. For instance, on a CD versus a record, when you can hear the skips on a record or voices in the background, some people didn't like how CD sounded, too clean. So they put in the skips. Similarly, I don't have the straight examples that you can invent, add glaze errors, or it's not a perfect piece, and so it looks more like it's made by hand, and that can be coded. And my only other point is in Turnitin, Anna, you were speaking of I was just reading Chronicle for Higher Education because I have to look at all this stuff for other academic institutions. Schools like Northwestern and Vanderbilt and University of Texas have banned professors from using Turnitin for a couple of reasons. One was lawsuits when teachers have accused students of plagiarism and it wasn't true, and the false kind of positives that come, as well as student complaints that their work is being taken from them and going into the black box of writing knowledge to be used by others. So it's just all really, as you open this with, Elaine, changing every day, and like so hard to keep up with, but fascinating, I think.
Rita, did you have a comment?
Yeah, well, I think a good application for the AI is through science. We recently did a project with aerial photography imagery, which is our business on the side. And we flew thousands of miles in the state of Wyoming doing a pronghorn survey to count pronghorn animals in the desert. And so this required flying morning and night. And so there's, I don't know, 10,000 or more imagery, individual still photos. And so we worked with the Wyoming Game and Fish and the University of Wyoming, and they are taking all that imagery and feeding it to an AI computer or whatever. And then it takes the time, the biologists don't have to sit there and look at the computer to identify pronghorn, because apparently the computer can do that faster and better. And so it saves time when there's a lot of data to process.
Interesting.
So we're happy with, yeah.
Yeah.
But they need the imagery to begin with, but then they process it that way.
Yeah. Robert, you had a comment, I think. You're muted.
Well, I have a really wonderful representative locally who started sending out AI pictures so that he could see what it was like to do that. And he created sort of portraits of himself in imaginary landscapes. And it was good. It was fun. It was like bad art, but but he was identifying it as what it was when he did that. I was thinking of it more because I know the problem of plagiarism in student work has gone on for a long time, other forms too. But I was asked by somebody the other day if it would be all right for somebody to write a university's art department self-study for them. They're not at the institution. And I thought, well, they would probably do an AI version of a self-study.
Whoa. Yeah. And Carol, you had your hand up. Sorry. You're muted, honey.
Thank you. Yeah, no apologies necessary. I just wanted to sort of jump in to talk about a little bit about a project that I'm working on with about 100 people. So this was since NCECA. And Linda, I don't know that, I think you must have seen the other talk on AI, because I gave it a talk on AI at NCECA and I did not say that The Handmaid was dead. I'm completely for AI, but I'm also completely for the idea that The Handmaid will totally exist. So this project that it's partway through, so I don't have a lot of the results yet, but what I'm doing is I did a call for entry for artists who actually wanted to start integrating AI into their practice, into their creative practices. And to get their feet wet, basically what I did was I've been working with Midjourney for over a year now, learning how to sort of have it like build narratives, build the prompts, but also figure out ways for it to get a bit more locked into certain aesthetics and stuff, so that you've got that characterization that you can carry through and repeat. Anyway, I gave them 10 galleries of images, and each of those galleries was a certain style of work. And all of these artists are now in their studios, and basically they've taken something from those AI generated ceramic pieces, and they're now creating stuff of their own inspired by that, which we're then going to feed back into the machine again and keep that sort of conversation going. So a lot of this research project, though, for me was about identifying like how artists feel about that authorship, how they feel about letting go. Most artists admit that they, like they have a Pinterest account full of things that they look at for inspiration, those kinds of things. So seeing this as a shift where you're actually controlling the imagery that's inspiring you more, but then still, altering it and taking it into your studio to create something different. So
interesting.
So when the artist, when you gave them the gallery and they are going to give it back to you, you're saying that they're going to give it back to you digitally, so that they've used your imagery to make digital images of ceramics. No, they're actually making the pieces.
They are making the physical pieces, and then I will be taking an image from that to put back into the machine with, and we're workshopping things so that they can learn how to do prompting and stuff like that too. So it's sort of this full scope, trying to educate people about how to use it themselves while also participating in this. So yeah, already it's incredibly interesting. We've got people who are 3D printing objects. There's other people who, you know, I look at them and I'm like, I have no idea what piece you chose that you've been inspired by. And then others that are close and stuff like that. It's incredibly interesting how eager everybody has been to jump in on that and just drop the idea of authorship for a bit and just make stuff.
And will you have an exhibition of the results?
That's the goal. Yeah, actually, I was approached at Ansika by a gallery curator who wants to show the show. So over the next couple months, we're going to be working. I'm going to be building that sort of the package to go out for all of that. But yeah, the goal is to have the objects in person together in relation to each other as well. Yeah,
That's great.
Carol,
Is
I
that-
should know this, but where are you?
I'm in Saskatoon. I'm in Canada.
Okay, yeah. Dee,
Yeah,
you
but
had a
participants are
comment.
all over the world, actually.
Yeah, oh,
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Dee?
Yeah, I'm Dee Wood, and I've written my second book now about craft and politics. And the thing that worries me about AI is connecting AI to 3D printers. I think that there is the risk that what constitutes the handmade could be jeopardized by connecting AI to a 3D printer and therefore eliminating the handmade from craft. You probably in the United States have seen lots of advertising whereby corporations are using the word craft for things like lettuce or financial plans or bacon. And having worked in the field of craft for a number of years, I'm seeing that the meaning of craft is being usurped for its assets by other parts of the community that really have nothing to do with craft. So my concern with AI and 3D printing is that this will lead to further setting aside of craft, that anyone can do it if you can plug into a machine. And whereas I think that the author who is using AI for images, I have no problem with that at all, but I also think that there is a great misunderstanding of what craft is, and it behooves us as craftspeople to try and maintain that.
Anna? Thank you, Dee. Anna?
Because I can't, it literally is
That's your
not on the
hand.
bottom. I've been trying, so this is my hand up. So, you know, it's interesting that you mentioned that, Dee, because I've been fighting this thing about 3D printing for like probably 10, 12 years because I've been using it for that long and in my work. And I think when photography first showed up, painters were, you know, the depth of painting. And I think there is this rough period with all of these new technologies where, you know, everybody's worried about it's the hand. Everybody's worried about losing the touch, that kind of thing, and the originality. But I'm seeing lots of really amazing and innovative things being done with 3D printing. But remember that, you know, it started probably in China to copy things. All right. It was even the title of it. Now it doesn't come to me. The name of what 3D printing was called had to do with basically being able to replicate things so that they would, you know, buy an engine from the US, 3D scan it, and the scanners are, you know, remarkable, and then be able to repeat it. And so that's where, I mean, that's where it started. But I think that where it's headed and where it's at now is so much more innovative. You know, Chad Curtis from Tyler's doing some just amazing stuff. It looks like string art, and it's just wild what he's doing with printing. And so, you know, I think there's always going to be the people you're talking about, Dee. I know that there's people that are going to use it just like certain people will use it to copy industrial things. But I think at the same time, I still, and I've written articles that say this is only a tool. You know, it's like the camera, it's like the wheel, because I'm sure that was a big deal at some point. And I think we just have to be a bit more open-minded, and I agree it will be abused. I'm not saying that what you're saying is not happening or not going to happen, but I guess I prefer not to use the kind of a doomsday sort of a thing with it, and sort of think that, yes, you know, there's going to be some of that type of use. But on the other hand, look at some of the innovative things that are being done today with such things as 3D printing. And I think once people get a better hang of AI and it improves, because some of the problem with 3D printing when I first started out was the quality was terrible. So, but I think the same will happen with AI.
Although I think this is quite a bit different. I think about when people were up in arms because paint was coming in a tube and not being mixed, you know. We were afraid of new tools. And although this does have legal implications and creative implications, it is a tool. And I am I'm really positively responding to what where did she go? What Joe said initially about how she used it in such a positive way. So yeah, anybody speak up. Rita?
Okay, so in response to what Dee was saying, I think more recent than a tube of paint conversion is when photography went digital. And now you can hardly buy a roll of film. And so I've been a professional photographer, and I was extremely resistant. And this was back in 99, 2000. And so many of us thought, oh, it would take away the whole craft and everything of photography and the art, because it would be, you'd be using a computer to do it all. And the camera is a computer. And so, you know, that was a great fear. And I got to admit, digital photography is very easy, but you know, Dee has a point, because I don't spend time in a dark room. I don't hand print a beautiful silver negative. I mean, I know you guys can understand that.
Janet, you're on two sources now. So we're getting, I'm getting an echo.
Sorry, I'm trying to close it.
Got it? Okay, further comments, questions? I'm getting my own voice back at me. Are you all getting that?
Can just turn off the audio on one of them and it'll be okay. Elaine, I think you can mute her, right? As the whatever,
Well, one of them is muted,
well, maybe
but I can mute the other one and let till she wants to say something.
Yeah,
There we
that's
go. Yeah, Janet, just wave frantically or hold up your hand if you if you want to talk. Yeah. Other comments? I'm glad to see Shoji joining us.
Elena,
Yes, Jim.
a little comment. I mean, I think all this points, or hopefully will give the group that's involved in the criticism effort even more energy. And it seems to point toward the need for a more vital and active, if you want to call it criticism, to see what is there, accurately there, whether, and to proclaim that this is machine made or this is something else made, but to the effort that you've stimulated for years. And I still, I've felt this for a long time. I'm sure many of you have heard me beat the drum. But the place of criticism as an active dialogue in the culture of making and appreciating marketing or whatever I think always needs help. And of course, you guys are doing that. But I think that the whole effort of AI and the place of AI, as Anna said, I agree totally. I think it's a very useful situation. It brings in other resources. Same with 3D printing. But there's subtleties that exist, many of which I think a lot of you have come in contact with. I mean, I go back to photography in a sense. If I had my choice, I would show slides in a carousel as opposed to digital images because they're so much richer, kinds of things. And I've, I've had other people reinforce that. So I think it, and I don't know how you deal with it. And of course, praise to you, Elaine, and others for bringing this up, that we need to look at this, see it as a tool, see what it can do, but then when something comes out, whether it's an article or a review or another piece of work, to be able to accurately say, okay, this is providing something of interest and it's stimulating, it's inspirational or whatever, or else to say, no, this is just like coming out of a can, so to speak. So I think it's a really important issue, but it lends, and I don't know what form that can take. But we need the ability to look at something and say it is a value or not a value, not just, oh my God, it's wondrous and fantastic, and where it fits. I think is as great as it's ever been.
Yeah,
So-
I don't know if you had tuned in yet, Jim, but Joe Laurie talked about using AI to cut a 300 or 350 word essay down to 250 words.
Right.
And that it kept her voice. I was really interested in that. And then Anna had the opposite. And that might be just the difference in the program, whether one is purchased or free or whatever.
I messed up with the time. I'm now in Santa Fe, no longer in Washington. So
Okay.
I needed to make the time.
Yeah, that's all right. Dee, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say two things. One is that when I was writing an essay about this, I looked on Etsy and Googled 3D printing. And there were over 1,000 objects on Etsy that had been made with a 3D printer. And although the nature of Etsy has changed since its onset, my question is how many people on that site know what the difference is between 3D printing and the handmade? And the second thing is that when I look at the demographic of this group, we all know what it was to do non-digital photography, to make, to cook meals from scratch, to make a cake without a cake mix, to be able to sew a button on a dress, to hem our pants. We come from that generation. The next, the people who came after us don't know the distinction. And so that's why I think that those in the craft field still have to champion what the handmade is.
Carol, you're next. And then Shoji.
Thanks. I just just in response to a couple of the comments, but going back to Rita, the idea, what you were talking about, like with photography, like I remember the darkroom days, and then digital photography allowed me to become a much better photographer because you shot 10 times more. Right. And so one of the things that I was walking through in my talk at NCCA was about how artists can use this as a tool, not necessarily like the 3D printing route or anything, but even just taking an image of your own work and putting it in. So I, for example, and I can share this with folks who email after. I made a piece that was a sketch, put that in, and then was able to render like hundreds, unlimited amounts of variations on that piece, so that before I even go to the studio, I'm doing a whole bunch of editing. And so a lot of what makes a good photographer or a good artist is that editing process, the editing process between like a vase and its form. And we focus with students on getting that. This allows them to see right away, side by side, all these different variations that they can then go through and visually edit what's working, what's not, because AI uses that. I mean, they've got like the design principles down pat of all of like how things are supposed to work. It actually gives students that ability through looking at something over and over again in a large quantity like that to learn how to edit and actually become more critical about their work before they're even making it. So I think there's something there too. And in regards to the keeping the handmade, and again, I'm 100% for the handmade, but even in my own experience in the last couple of years with getting sick, I've had a lot of neuropathy issues, and I'm not allowed in, I can't be in the studio in the same way that I was before. And I do see that there is also a market wherein artists with disabilities can use this and can still create objects, even if they can't be in the studio working by hand. And so that's another part of research I've got going forward, is about that integration as well. But I also just want to say, like, I find it interesting that any environment that I'm in talking with artists about AI and that visual stuff, artists seem to be the most scared about this than anybody else. And what worries me is that artists aren't using it. And therefore this representation of what's, you know, being made by AI is this crappy art made by people who just want to see like Trump on a donkey, you know? So the more artists are using it, the more artists are like pushing back with it too, right? Like when I go into AI and I'm using Midjourney, I'm trying to find the edges of things, and I'm trying to sort of, you know, you mess around with it, you ignore all the rules. That's what creative people are supposed to do. So I'm all for everybody just getting in there and like messing with it too, right? Just having no fear.
So it's become your sketchbook.
Absolutely. I have
yeah.
20,000 plus images of things that are like, yeah, this component over here that worked really nicely, and I'll bring it in with this. Like I basically have like 10 lifetimes worth of work that I won't be able to make, right? Just a year of that.
Yeah.
But my editing, like, to now there's just this different feeling going into the studio because I've made so many decisions before even going in there to start that piece, if that makes sense.
Interesting. Yeah, definitely. Shoji, you were next, and then Anna with her little orange hand.
Yeah, I use Midjourney also, and I use like Artist AI, not only with my own work, but with like my students' work. And but I always kind of stress it that, you know, it is like another tool, right? It's like a potter's wheel or a slab roller, an extruder. And then the thing is that with these kind of applications, that it's only about as smart as dumb as a person actually operates. So you really have to learn how to use it. And so, you know, it's great, I think, as it reminds us that there's all this greater possibilities of things that we can do. My biggest concern with AI really is more on, not so much on the studio practice, because I think what AI is actually going to make us do in the next 3 to 5 years really think about emphasizing the hand and really things that the AI can't do, right? There's going to be certain things that we do in the studio that AI will never be able to replicate, that will become a lot more important. I was just on a webinar with this, I was organized and invited by this guy who did all the AI work for Avatar, James Cameron's last movie. And there were like there was an architect from Cornell on there and 2 AI engineers from MIT and a few other people. And they were already talking about how in their world that AI is already doing their work for them, right? That it's starting to replace people, that a degree in design basically is worthless. Graphic design is worthless. Interior design is worthless, right? It's because gaming is worthless, right? Because AI is already starting to do all that work. And in the next 3 to 5 years, it'll become even so much more sophisticated. All these kids getting degrees in those fields are not going to find work. And it's really going to decrease the return on investment for a lot of academic, like, you know, for a lot of university institutions. That's what they look for. And so I even have, like, I had 2 gaming students in my class, in my intro ceramics class. and they got into gaming because they were encouraged to go into like a video to a digital field in the arts from their high school teachers, because they said they were going to get jobs. But by the second semester of their freshman year, both of them realized that they were never going to get a job in the gaming industry because how fast AI is moving. So they switched their majors. So, the part of the issue, I think, is that this stuff is happening so fast, the intellectual property issues and like copyright laws, all these things are being written after the fact. I just did a panel for the NEA, and they don't even have any AI guidance. And half of the proposals that I read were written with ChatGPT. Oh, like you're looking at one, it's there's this community group in New York City, they're doing all this great work. Halfway through the proposal, because nobody decided to edit, it starts talking about how much good they're doing in Minneapolis and the work that they're doing in Minnesota, and then all the work that they've been contributing there, even though this place was actually registered and the proposal was coming from New York City. And so, what this webinar taught me was that, there's a lot of potential in AI, but really, like, there will be a small group of people helping to control that content. And so then who gets to decide that, right? It becomes like, well, those are kind of things that I started to think about. But so I mean, I think, for us as artists, I think it's a tool that we can use. We just have to be really smart about how we interpret it.
Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of across the board, regardless of discipline.
Right.
Anna.
So this is actually a little bit of a follow-up. I read the New York Times every day, and they have these like little quizzes and tests, like history ones, and do you remember what you read this week? And they did one on AI to see, with images, to see if you could guess. And I flunked. But I did flunk, but I did catch quite a few of them. And one of the things that people that I've noticed, especially if it's something that has lots of detail, is to look at places like people's hands, feet, perspective, and lots of times you'll notice that those are the areas where it falls short and becomes really obvious. So I couldn't guess all the time. I did guess some. But the moral of the story is, if you're trying to discern, is this image AI, one of the things to do is to look carefully at the details, because lots of times, like, the fingers aren't well articulated, or details on some piece of furniture or something, or a chair. Lots of times chair legs are askew. That was another kind of a hint. So there are some subtle ways to, not always, because like I said, I missed some of them. That was one that was interesting. You probably could look it up if you go to their search engine. I found that was really interesting.
Diane, and then Robert.
Just a quick point about people talking about the crappy art, let's say on Etsy, or artists not harnessing it well. I was at Haystack, where they have the MIT Fab Lab, and that's a place I'd want to keep my eyes on, as well as Anderson Ranch, where they're using AI to combine both artists of a high degree and the MIT students, and have them collaborate to create projects driven by the artists. And the other point goes back to, it seems like there are a lot of photographers here, and I do photography and work out of a national park in Maryland. And our demographics, and those that I've looked at around the country, the largest growth is in the 20 and 30-year-olds who are coming back to the darkroom. They say that sitting at their computers all day and either not moving and interacting with a screen, whether it's been in Colorado, when I did some research on this, people want to, use their hands to make. And in fact, there was a resident who had a tree made out of wood, and he had his best success in Seattle. People had to commit for 2 to 3 years to build portions of a tree, and they were mostly in the computer science field, probably driven by where Seattle is. But just so interesting that all these people that aren't having tactile experiences, many are returning to art to get something that they can't get through the work life of the 21st century.
Any comments after that? I find that interesting because I'm always, well, Robert, you had a comment before he stepped away, I guess. But I'm always telling people about all the hugs we get in Sika. We're tactile people, and we crave that maybe more than someone who doesn't have a material to touch, such as a glass blower. But Anna.
So just what I've seen is we have one of our former alums, Sarah Truman, started a studio, ceramic studio, and it has since expanded to a huge, basically a warehouse. And 40 community people signed up to use their community spaces in one, like as soon as she opened, first day. And they have lots of classes that are, and I've talked to people that want to go to these classes, and I brought friends over with me to do this, where it's like throw in, have a drink, you know, sip and spin and all this kind of stuff. And so I agree with you, because I think people are tired of being in front of their computer screens or working mundane jobs, and they're looking for places to play with their hands. And so they, you know, and Sarah's sister started a print shop that's similar to that, where you can go and make prints. And there's just a huge, there's even one of the bars in town is doing mosaic workshops. I'm not exaggerating. So I do think that that, you know, it's definitely people searching for a way to use their hands, be creative, relax, not stare at a screen, interact with other people. It's really becoming important. And I could just see it in these things that just happening around town here.
We have human needs. And I think not only the tactile, but also the creative. So we don't either want an AI or any other tool to take that part of it away from us. Joe?
I was just commenting that in 2011, I wrote a long feature for American Craft magazine, which was titled Expanding the Toolbox. And it was interviews with 3 different schools. One on the West Coast, Otis College of Art and Design, no, 2 on the West Coast, Art Center College in Pasadena, and Tyler School in Philadelphia. And it was about how they felt about the handmade as versus all the computer assisted technologies. And, you know, as some of you may know, Stanley Lecton, who is head of the program of jewelry and metalsmithing at Tyler, he was the one who brought computers into the lab, like in 1972. And the consensus was that, yes, all of these tools are great, and the students really are, you know, interested in using all of them, but they always use them in coordination with, in partnership with their hands. They, you know, even if something is totally generated in the end by a computer, you know, by a 3D printed jewelry piece, the student has had a lot of involvement before it gets to that end product. And they all love to learn all the hand techniques, especially in metalsmithing. I don't think there's any kind of computer that can take the place of metals, actually metalsmithing, as there aren't any for, you know, really throwing on the wheel. Yes, you can print a 3D vessel, but it's always going to look like, you know, a 3D coiled vessel. So I don't think this is a new discussion. I think that it is happening, you know, for the last 15 years. And we saw a trend, at least the heads of these departments saw a trend that the students are all demanding more hands-on work. And that, you know, and that was 13 years ago.
Yeah, that's great. We're at the end of our time, but great discussion, you guys. This has been interesting, and it brings up the idea that maybe we want more of these to be this kind of discussion rather than just someone presenting for half an hour. So I'm always open to suggestions from you. For those of you who are new, if you would like to be on the email list, just put your name and email in the chat, and I'll put you on so you receive it every month. and you can come or not. And we have about 115 people on that list right now. When we do have a guest, I'm able to pay them $100 to do a half-hour presentation. And I appreciate the donors who, many of you whom are here, who have contributed. But I think this, with the number of people who are here, has shown that discussion can be lively and have a lot of interest. So please email me with ideas. I've been doing this now for 4 years, and what happens sometimes is I email somebody and then I don't hear back, and then I think, well, do I email somebody else or do I wait to hear from this person? And then I get down to the time where time is short and I don't have anybody to present. So I'm always open to your ideas. Just let me know. But next month we will have Randy O'Brien, who is now, I believe, the only staff person at Studio Potter. So she's going to update us on what's going on there, their edition of the podcasts, and what Nancy alluded to. And so she's going to bring us up to date with what's happening with that great historical contribution to the ceramics field. And anyway, stay in touch. Thank you for coming. And I will send you a link to this recording when I get this up on what is it, YouTube? That's where they go.
Elaine,
Anna?
I don't want to miss that Carol has offered to involve more of the Canadian people. And frankly, I would love to see what you're doing with that project at some point too. I'm putting you on
Yes,
the spot, Carol.
Yeah, maybe Carol would be a presenter here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
that's what I was thinking.
so yeah, my comment is that as Make and Do as an organization, we do some fundraising, and it's always just about promoting Canadian ceramics. But we do have a small amount of funding. Like if you're paying people $100, yeah, if we've got some Canadians, then I'll tell the group that we have to we have to pay for those. We'll get involved.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
great.
in the
That's
loop for
great.
that.
We do have a couple who tune in now and then, but it's sporadic. So that would be great. I appreciate your being here.
No,
And
thank you so much for letting me crash the party.
yeah, sure. And we will meet in August, and the third Thursday, same time, same station. But we will not meet in September because many of us will be in Portugal for the IAC Congress. So if you're going to that, we'll see you next month, same place, same time, and otherwise I'll see you in Portugal maybe. How many of you are going to Portugal? Good. Not, oh, Janet, you're not. Oh, it's so expensive from down under. Okay, well, thanks to all the new people who came, and stay in touch. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thanks.